Were you alive during the 70s? Do you have memories of the 70s? The reason I ask is I think we're going to go back into the 70s. High energy prices, supply chain issues, scarcity of goods. And I'm trying to remember to get ahead of what were the... See, it's going to be different now because the 70s and now are completely different with technology, completely different with things. But at the end of the day, what was hard to come by in the 70s? So for me, I remember it was meat. We never had meat. Very, very rarely did we have meat. Partly it's because my mom was a hippie and we had tofu. So tofu, pizza, but we hardly ever had hamburgers. All right, so we had liver. I know liver is a meat, but I think liver is a poor man's meat. I don't know. I just think that because that's all we used to have. Hardly ever had steak. Hardly ever had hamburger. I don't even remember having chicken. We had chickens. I don't think we butchered them. I just think we had the eggs. And we had our last chickens probably was like 8 or 9. But what else was hard to come by in the 70s? So obviously back then, very few people had color TV, if they had a TV at all. No one had air conditioning. Very few people had air conditioning. At least in Maine. Well, remember, I lived in Maine. I don't know about you all, but wherever you were from, we had a wood stove. Yeah, we didn't obviously we didn't have LED lights. All right, so you turn the lights off. You know, a 60-watt bulb. I mean, you think about it, 60-watt bulb on 10 hours a day. That's 600 watt hours right there. So a 60-watt bulb on 20 hours a day. That's 1.2 kilowatt hours right there. Just running. You know what I'm saying? It's when you factor in high electricity prices. Because how were you getting electricity? I'm sure we're using coal a lot back then, but everyone hated coal even back then, man. In fact, there's a article I just read from 1913 talking about coal is going to lead to global warming. So everyone hated coal because of CO2. Of course, in the 70s, they didn't have to worry about warming. They were worried about cold, global cooling. And all these people said, no one did. They're lying, man. Lying. The minute someone says that no one was concerned about global cooling in the 70s, just hang up on them, they're lying. So I'm trying to think. So we used, now Jimmy Carter didn't want coal, all right, but he knew we had no natural gas, so he had to go to coal. We had major oil issues with supplies because of OPEC, and we weren't drilling our own. All right, so we've come a long way. Well, one of the reasons energy is so cheap is because of fracturing, hydraulic fracturing, fracking, getting natural gas out of the, and even other elements down there, hydrocarbons out of the earth by our technology improvement to get natural gas. We've been able to identify some coal, some oil. Permian Basin has huge amounts of natural gas, huge amounts of oil. It's nuts. But if they're going to restrict our ability to get it, which is a self-goal, I should say, whereas at least in the 1970s, it wasn't us, it was OPEC. So now we got the resources, we got the know-how, but we don't have the political courage because the globalists have taken over everything, the Davos crowd, the BlackRocks. And what they've done is they say, hey, we're going to regulate things so much that it's going to be expensive for you to live your life. Now, if you're rich, that's fine. But if you're poor, that's not fine. It's, fiefdom, man. The 0.1% against the rest. Anyway, so I'm trying to think. Like, what else was... So think about it. If you would, was spaghetti easy to come by? I don't know, man. I mean, I was born in 1970, so my first 5 years, I don't remember anything other than some chickens and stuff. But from 5 to 10, we never had any candy. I remember that. We never had any soda. But this just might be my own, family dynamic. My parents and stuff. Do we have strawberries abundantly? Do we have oranges? I don't recall. Did we have oranges in the winter? I doubt it. Because it costs a lot of money to ship goods. And because of the price of oil. And because it costs a lot of money to ship goods, that meant the goods are expensive at the grocery. If they're expensive at the grocery and you're on food stamps, you can't afford, like they can now, you can't afford to waste money on oranges because they're freaking expensive. You know what I'm saying? Now, I remember we had powdered milk. Obviously had the government cheese. But I'm just trying to think, like, what else was expensive back then that we can prepare for? Because the stagflation is here, my friends. It's coming. I tell you, the energy cost increasing is it's going to be ugly. Going to be ugly. And again, this isn't because inflation, because of government spending. It's because of inflation due to scarcity. No cheap energy, no cheap goods. That's all there is to it, if any goods. So what else was out there that you recall? You're like, man, again, it can't be technology per se, computers and televisions and LED lights, because we've already got that now. But what else is out there? Like, what else is? I'm just driving under a Buckhead, by the way, if you're wondering where I'm at. Just had to take Maddie back to Georgia Tech. Mostly I'm thinking about food, like food. I think it's gonna be beef. I think it's gonna be meats in particularly. Produce is easy, and produce is equivalent of vegetables, right? Because you can grow that yourself. So I don't expect that to be crazy expensive, because those aren't hard to grow. I mean, you don't even need chemicals or synthetic fertilizer. Look, if you can just grow it in your backyard, even if you don't have a fertilizer, even if you're not, you don't buy the organic crap, which I don't, but you can grow it back there without even the synthetic fertilizers, without even any, trying to be organic. You can put a tomato tree back there, plant, and grow. Now, obviously, the fertilizer helps because the nutrients for the plant to grow abundantly, but at the end of the day, you don't need all that to grow. So anyway, I just wonder what your thoughts are. I'd like to hear, because I'm trying to be prepared, and I know there's something I'm missing. What could it be? We always had firewood growing up. We didn't have stores of food, I recall. I'm just trying to think of a 70s-ish stagflation came our way. What would I wish I had more of that I don't have more of now? And this would be from a viewpoint of you remembering where you were in the 70s. Maybe you're in Pennsylvania. Maybe you're in West Virginia. I don't know. Maybe you're in California. Said, man, we didn't have any of this. What would it be? That's still a staple today, if that makes sense. All right, let me hear your thoughts. We'll see you.